ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start now. Very good morning. I wish to Yang Berhormat Senator Gan Ping Siu, Deputy Minister of Youth and Sports, Mr. Lim Chi Wee, President of the Malaysian Bar, and members of the floor. I, Melissa Sasidaran, on behalf of the Bar Council National Young Lawyers Committee, welcome all of you to the latest episode of the Siri Pemikiran Kritis, a forum on race relation laws, backward or forward. We are honoured to have a panel of esteemed speakers, and they are Associate Professor Dr. Azmi Sharom, Mr. Faisal Moideen, and Mr. Syahredzan Johan. The forum will be moderated by Dato Ambiga Sreenevasan. For those who are not able to make it here today, the forum will be streamed live at www.livestream.com/nationalylc, or you can follow the live updates on Twitter account at @n_ylc, or follow the hashtag SPK2012. Without further ado, let us welcome Mr. Lim Chi Wee, President of the Malaysian Bar, to give his welcoming speech.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. Good morning. YB Senator Gan Ping Siu, Deputy Minister of Youth and Sports, distinguished speakers, fellow members of the Bar, distinguished guests. Race relation in Malaysia is an enigma. On the surface, there appears to be peace and harmony unseen in other countries of similar demographics and circumstances. Yet, when probed further below the surface, there's tension and concern. How then does one address the tension and concern which is symptomatic of real problems involving race relations in Malaysia? The government plays the most important role. Our slogans, such as One Malaysia and legislation, the medicine for this illness. What is inadequate with Chapter 15 of the Penal Code on offences relating to religion and Section 3(1)(e) of the Sedition Act, which criminalizes the promotion of feelings of ill will and hostility between different races, apart from the Bar seeking a repeal of the Sedition Act? Can the government effectively legislate race harmony by modelling it after the UK Race Relations Act, which bars discrimination on the grounds of race, colour, nationality and ethnicity in employment, provision of goods and services, education and public functions? And how does that model sit with Article 153 of the Federal Constitution? Why has the government changed its mind no less than 4 times as to the need for such a piece of legislation? In September 2008, the then Home Minister, Dato Sri Syed Hamid Albar, revealed the government was considering such a law. Then, Unity, Culture, Arts and Heritage Ministry, headed by Dato Sri Shafiq Abdal, said that the government had decided not to pursue the law because there was no need for it, adding that race relations are something that comes naturally and cannot be forced through legislation. In December 2011, Dato Sri Mohammad Nazri said that the government would table the bill in Parliament in March this year. And in March this year, the same minister said that the bill may not be tabled because there are other laws in place to handle race relations, such as the Sedition Act. This flip-flop focuses attention on the law-making process in Malaysia. Why is there no public consultation on the proposed contents of the bill? Apart from the legislative scheme, has the government demonstrated sufficient political will in leading public opinion and values on race relations and in stemming unhealthy developments to the extent it is prepared to be unpopular with certain quarters and lose votes, their votes, but in the name and interest of harmony and unity? These are questions which I, with you, members of the audience, hope that our speakers, especially YB Senator Gan Ping Siu, no pressure on you, Senator, can enlighten us. On a final note, I wish to praise the National Young Lawyers Committee, so energetically and passionately led by Richard Wee, where its members share in equal measure the energy and passion of its chair. Their prolific work, apart from being read in Putik-Lada column in the Star, can now be seen and heard in the Siri Pemikiran Kritis, which serves to contextualize and lift to another level of thought and intellect current issues of the day affecting all Malaysians. Shabas dan Tanya to NYLC and to the audience for the interest shown in participating in this forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lim. Now let us welcome Yang Berhormat Senator Gan Ping Siu to give a speech.
Thank you very much to our charming MC of the day. Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera dan salam satu Malaysia. That is our usual tag every morning. Thank you very much for the invitations, and Saudara Richard Wee, the chairman of the National Young Lawyers Committee, then the president of BAR, Saudara Chiwi, our distinguished moderator, Dato Ambiga, distinguished speakers, all the learned friends and members of the media, and ladies and gentlemen. So allow me to say a big thank you for giving me the honor to be here this morning to officiate this Siri Pemikiran Kritis SPK organized by National Young Lawyers Committees. What I would say on a Saturday morning, a forum of this nature, a solemn topic, much mooted, can be rather heated at times, and a forum is organized on a Saturday morning with participations from all, and I see from different backgrounds and multiracial nature. This is a good sign. Certainly, I think in Malaysia, we can always conduct peaceful and rational discussion about issues of public importance, issues that touch on the national and social issues. And of course, Bar Council, I was one of the members before. I hope one day come back to this house and to go back to practice. But having said that, Bar Council has conducted many seminars, some of which were controversial. I still remember I attended in 2008, and Zuckerberg Nordin, I was sitting just about there, and he was making a fuss about the whole thing. And that makes the whole rational discourse about public issues, try to frustrate the whole seminar. That was most unfortunate, but times have changed. I'm sure people in our countries, rational people, want to have a better say, wants to be in the mainstreams of the voices of our society. But having said that, I always believe in one thing. How civilized society is reflected from how we can conduct a forum of this nature. How civilized is our society, how civil we can conduct a seminar, a forum of this nature. But that's why I say thank you and congratulate our NYLC. Please continue this effort. That includes our Bar Council. Continue an efforts of this nature. And I actually hope NYLC can be a progressive force in our society. I actually personally do believe in a more participatory and deliberative type of democratic practices in our country. And in many forums, I openly say that this government, or any government of the day, be it in the national or federal or the state levels, you should be involved in more wider consultation, more extensive consultations, bipartisan, less political rhetorics, less political language, and hopefully less populist in nature. And that is how civil we can become. And of course, personally, I do believe a wider consultations is best model for our country. It's better model of politics, and this is better model for politics for the sake of the country. Mind you, our countries are very different from other countries, and race relations is one of the topics which is mooted over the years. All this came about, as you all understand, for the last couple of years, especially around 2006, 2007, 2008 in particular, and a few instances causing the government to reflect, to think. It's actually quite divided view on this. I'm sure quite many ministers believe that we should regulate, we should set some norms and try to quiet all this unnecessary ethnic comments and all that. But on the other hand, there are also some believe otherwise, saying that are we really that bad? Do we really need all this further legislations to regulate all this? But in fact, I do believe that the politicians, community leaders, and even civil servants, in fact, we all have a role, even in private practice. I would say, I dare not say all of us, but in private. I suppose over the course of our life, we do utter some, I think, racially toned words. What I would say, I still remember when I studied overseas in England, and my friend would say, even Malaysian friends, I heard that before, nothing straight about Chinese except their hair. For example, things like that. I don't see Kiwi's hair any straighter anyway. But, okay. And we will say, for example, I have a driver, and my friends and I say, hey, where's Ahmad? I think that is derogatory in nature. Ahmad is an Ahmad, it's a name, but we call driver Ahmad. So how do you feel? What is his feeling? He is known as an Ahmad. That is, these are the words commonly uttered in our life. And of course, if you are working in certain places, then we'll say this is Bangla job. Or what's wrong with Bangladesh? And then you may say this is Bangla's job. And that is also derogatory. And I think it actually creates ill will among people. And let alone those like Balik Tongsan, Balik Jawa, or Balik India, the kind of even more unpleasant words. And of course, I would say, even if I'm from the Hokkien, we refer to other ethnic communities using the words Indian, Malay, using the words sometimes. I've been repeating it when I was young, you know. And that is a reference, I shouldn't say it now because it's very unpleasant, but it's how we call other people. And that is something that even in private we do that all the time. And so this is real problems. But now, because of the viral effects of the Facebook, social media, and there are people, because they're so used to that, when they come to the stage, they've forgotten they are leaders, and whatever they say, their remarks will be recorded and create a huge unnecessary role. In fact, in private, we do that all the time, and this is something that we really have to look into it. What's wrong with us in this aspect? And I'm sure, I always think the other part of it is, with the advance of social media, the IT, information disseminations has become so fast and so extensive. Everyone, especially the younger generation, everyone can be, and everyone is an opinion leader now. So whatever it says, it must come with responsibility. So that is something that we probably have to adjust our lifestyle, the way we present ourselves. Even in the Facebook, you see a lot of abusive languages, violent languages, and they just, as if they are your arch enemy for the last 3 generations. The way they put it, it's very disheartening. Sometimes I look at that. No matter from which political divide, politicians. No matter which political divide, we are equally guilty of indulging in this. But over this topic for the Race Relations Law and Race Relation Act, I'm sure there are some in favor of it, some are against of it. But at the moment, as far as I understand, it will not be tabled in the present Parliament session. As I said, this is controversial. And giving the general elections coming, the last thing the present government wants to be engaged in is engaged in another piece of legislation that create another round of debate and all that, and people get completely out of hand. Probably that may be one of the reasons why it will not be tabled in this Parliament. But I'm not in the position to express this because I think that is under those three nurseries and Vicky Liu's portfolio. But having said that, actually, those who are in favor of it say we should have some norms in our society. We should have some final say whether whatever you utter, your conduct has gone out of the bound. It is something unbecoming. And on the other hand, on one hand, we want a very paternalistic society. I tell you, listen to what I say, this is the norm. But on the other hand, if we don't set the norm, how are we going to move forward? And who are supposed to set the norm is another problem. And politicians, I've seen enough from both political divides in their speeches playing to the galleries. Populists make people happy, get people angry, and that is something that we should get away with from it in the time to come. And on the other hand, some will say with the RRA then, or whatever name you call it, and the implementation part of it, enforcement part of it. Are we not having enough legislations and statutes or the laws that's to regulate all this? All the things, I suppose, and the distinguished speakers of the day can share with us what they think. But one thing that someone actually tell me this, just like faith, your religious belief, your faith cannot be legislated. And is that also true that love and compassion cannot be legislated? We cannot force you to love some other people if you don't like him. Or maybe Chiu doesn't like my face, so I cannot force him to like my face, for example. So is this something that we shouldn't legislate to compel, but legislate to compel may be one thing. There may be punishment, mechanism of redress. But are we not supposed to have some basic norms? Of course, we have our constitution to say equality before the law, And we have some articles that tries to involve in affirmative actions and all that, how to set a balance. It doesn't seem to be seems to have a very clear view. Sometimes when we're talking about merits, then we're talking about affirmative actions, how to set a balance, that's also unclear. Who would have the final say about all this? And whether our developmental stage of our society at this stage, should we allow 100% all-in or 100% merit-based, meritocracy-based, 100% competitions, or are we supposed to have some certain affirmative actions to help to assist those socially disadvantaged, no matter, and also on the ethnicity, and or just merely on the socially disadvantaged, will help to be inclusive, will help them disregard their ethnic background. And these are the issues that we have to address. But something about Malaysia is one thing. I actually strongly believe in this. I hope I can share with you. When we're talking, our country, for one, is definitely not an assimilated country. Our ethnic identity is so important to every single ethnic community. We hold on to it so dearly, especially with this probably is the new global international norm, that we want to preserve the tradition and heritage and culture, language, and even religious belief of particular ethnic community has become even more important than ever before. Assimilation could take place probably in the 50s, 60s, or even earlier than that. But now if you try to implement assimilation, it's a no-no even by any standard, not only Malaysia's international standard, that's considered, that is compelling and try to devour the ethnic minority. So its new international norm is cultural diversity. Diversity has become the norm, and therefore we celebrate diversity. And therefore you hear politicians and leaders not only to celebrate diversity, Idris Jalal loves to say that, and also PMC love to say that, and also you see that we celebrate, we advocate, we propagate unity in diversity, and that's new norm. But then again, our ethnic, because of our demographic and our social structure in Malaysia, Cheras will forever be Cheras. You don't have to compel the Malays or Indians to move over there and naturally become the Chinese enclave, or for that matter, Bukit Bintang. And for that matter, Ibrahim Ali's Pasir Mas, it will be an enclave for the Malay. Partly because of the land status, partly because it's naturally we develop into, we find our own comfort zone. Well, because of our we have ethnic identity, our language, our way of life, our traditions, and we tend to get together. So the only place that I always feel that such things rarely happen is probably TTDI, probably Damansarahat. These are the affluent, rich people. Language is not a barrier. Their way of life probably more urbanized, and they get together more often. But even in Kuala Lumpur, Klang Valley, you can see that places like Bukit Bintang, Bandar Tun Razak, certain places, all in their own enclave. And that is the distinct part of our ethnic identity in Malaysia. So some people get confused. You have leaders who say that, are you Malaysian first or are you Malay first, for example? And then they get confused. In fact, it's totally two different concepts. One is the nationality, one is the ethnic community. If you were which one comes first, I will tell you, I'm Chinese first and I also Malaysian first, because they're different concepts. So we get confused with that also. So that creates a lot of unnecessary ill will, and these conceptual things must be clarified also. So what's next for us? Personally, I believe in some setting some norms. And perhaps for a start for our country, that we should look into our public authorities, federal, states, and local, whoever rules the government. And actually advocate for, personally I do advocate for commissions of equality, or commissions for affirmative actions, or commissions for whatever name you call it, or commissions for equality, and in the model of Suhakam. Some may say Suhakam is a toothless tiger, but I actually quite disagree with that. We need in our society someone take the lead to say which is right and wrong, and that right and wrong cannot be coming from politicians alone, or from whoever is holding the power, or whoever is in a religious authority, or in some community leaders alone. It should be a norm that is looking for a common ground, a common consensus, and what is a norm that is best suited for our country at this juncture of our development. And that is important. And perhaps, but then to set up the commissions of equality. So what are the spheres? What are the things that we have to look into and how to deal with it? And of course, are you going into private sectors? equal access to employment, and we are not talking about gender equality as yet, and in terms of scholarship, access to tertiary education, and how to set a balance and all that. But perhaps maybe for stage 1. These are the wider issues, and I'm sure there are plenty of examples that we can learn from foreign countries, despite the fact that their demographic is very different from ours. If we want to take American example, American is a lot more different countries. Their ethnic identity important, but not as distinct as Malaysia, or taking UK for example. And this is a more homogeneous society as compared to Malaysia. Maybe we can take the examples for Switzerland. You have a French-speaking zone, you have the German-speaking zone, and the Italian-speaking zone, and how they live together. Or maybe take Belgium, for example, the north and the south, they're at loggerhead, but how they live together peacefully. So whatever that may be, so there are certain norms that we have to set. Therefore, I feel the first thing that we should do is to look into, start from the public authority, to look at, is there any institutional discriminatory conduct that we have to rectify. If you have a SWACAM that it becomes a redress mechanism, a place to find remedy, it can be very controversial. Then you are bringing the whole element of issues. But therefore, I feel that we may have commissions appointing the right people, just like SWACAM commissioners, well-respected gentlemen, senior members of society, come out and say something that fulfill not only the national interest and in our image in the international community. So maybe we should look into, first stage, look into institutional discriminatory conducts and study, examine, receiving complaints, look into it. What are the laws, policies, and practices that we are having which is discriminatory in nature? And then I think government has to show that we are taking the lead, to set an example. And of course not to say that private sectors, NGOs, or any community leaders shouldn't set the lead, shouldn't set an example. But I do feel government has a duty to take the lead to do all this. And secondly, policies, laws, policies, and practices may be one part of it. We also have to look into the structural problem. Whether our public delivery system, our structural, public authorities, structural problem, if any, and the apparatus, government machineries of implementations of all levels of government, federal, state, and local governments, whether our apparatus, our government machineries, our agencies of governments are doing their part to ensure racial equality or